let's see now. There we go. And that is me boomering that one. All right, let's try again. Hello and welcome to another edition of Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Blind Eye himself, Hunter King, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media, a small internet media firm. Oh goodness, my headset was not plugged in. I'd unplugged it. Dadgummit. Anyway, so getting into the show for today, we had a big trade over the weekend. Orlando Brown is now part of the Kansas City Chiefs. We will get into that. And I've got the Ravens depth chart. And probably after that, I'll get into the Chiefs and kind of the implications for their roster. Originally, it was reported. Well, I'll get into that when I get into the trade. Beyond that, I'm going to talk about how the NBA's play-in tournament it's dumb. It's a dumb idea. All it is it's a grab for a couple, literally just maybe a few extra games. Which, from revenue purposes, sure, that's nice, but it doesn't provide any real substantive value, in my opinion. I don't know, and it's also built to de-incentivize tanking or decentivize tanking. I don't necessarily think it does, though, personally. So we'll get into that. And I've got some more stuff. There's not a bunch of big news items necessarily today. If I wanted to kind of brush up on a few things other things that happened over the weekend, Kevin Durant, seemed like he kind of maybe re-aggravated his injury. I think he missed another game or two, but he came off the bench in the Nets game yesterday. 33 points off the bench. So there's that. But James Harden seems like he's going to be out a little while. I'm going to make fun of Stephen A. Smith for saying that Kyrie and KD are probably regretting, choosing the Nets over the Knicks. I don't know if he's aware, but what's happening with the Knicks this season would not have happened or would not be happening if Kyrie and KD had come to the team. And I'm just saying, I doubt the Knicks would have swung the trade for Harden. I don't know, maybe they would have been able to, but I don't know. I don't think KD and Kyrie are regretting going to the Nets at all at this point. Not yet. So, and this Knicks revival is great. But none of these players make the development or would be having the development track that they're on if KD and Kyrie were there. Julius Randle doesn't get to make this kind of leap because he doesn't get to play the way that he's playing. Now, maybe he improves in other ways, but I don't know. R.J. Barrett. I mean, he's a young player, and maybe they would have, it would have helped to have Kyrie around last year. But RJ probably doesn't have his current role on the team if Kyrie and KD are there. So he's probably not making the big jump that he's made this season because he wouldn't be getting all these opportunities to run pick and rolls and handle such a or the playmaking burden that he gets to have right now. So, and Emmanuel quickly doesn't even, or there's no way he gets the role that he has right now. So I just think that's laughable from Stephen A. Smith. And it's just really annoying that ESPN has just become the Stephen A. Smith network at this point. Stephen A. can be great, But that ESPN is so New York centric and LA centric. It's just real. It's really sad. It's extremely sad. For the worldwide leader in sports, your worldview literally centers around like 2 cities. And only those 2 cities matter. You really need to branch out with your personalities. With with that being said, Steph Curry has set, with still games to go this month, has broken the NBA record, or has set the NBA record for threes in a month already with 85. Which I didn't look up who held it before him, although I'm kind of expecting it to be like him or maybe James Harden or someone like that. But 85 threes in a month, and today is the 26th, so we've still got, I don't know how many games they have left in the next 5 days, but he can still build on that. I mean, Steph's just on it. And that team would be nothing without him. He has the best MVP case probably of any player ever to be on a team that might miss the playoffs. And also, Draymond Green had a 19-assist game. I think that was Friday night or Saturday night. 19 assists. Are you kidding me? Like, those two guys have a basketball mind meld. They're basketball soulmates. They elevate each other. It truly is incredible, like, just how good those two players are on the mental level of the game. Steph is the greatest shooter of all time, by far. But his intellect with the ball and off the ball, like leveraging the danger he represents, is unparalleled. Because this guy could do what James Harden does. He's not quite as big or as physical, so getting the basket or whatever. But in terms of his ability to create out of isolation and play make, he's a genius level playmaker as well. There are passes he sees and things that he sees on the court that very few players do. He could easily be a 10-plus assists per game player. But that's not how he leverages himself at all times, because he has Draymond Green, who is a genius-level playmaker to work with. And throughout his career, he has had other great playmakers as well. Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston. KD is a pretty good playmaker. He's not he's not on that Curry, Draymond, or I would say probably not even on Andre Iguodala's level vision-wise, but KD is such a great player. Like, he understands how he manipulates the defense and the opportunities he creates for others. So, and Kevin Looney's a sneaky good big when it comes to reading the floor and understanding where to be, what to do, and being on page with what the other guys do. And Klay Thompson's a high-level basketball thinker. He rarely dribbles the ball. He moves, he shoots, he passes, and he can run a pick and roll as well when he does decide, I'm going to put the ball on the deck for a sec. But Steph and Dre are just geniuses. I mean, special basketball minds. And it just shows in you look at the track record that those guys have from 2014-15 to now, when they're both healthy and on the court together. It's incredible. And that vision and genius even, it shows up on defense, especially for Dre. Dre is the best. He is probably the best, most impactful all-around defender we've had in that, 7-season stretch? 2014, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19. Yeah, 7-season stretch. He's the best all-around defender over that 7-year period. And his ability to defend like 1-on-2 on the fast break, like him versus 2 guys, he wrecks those like 2-man opportunities more than he gets beat by them. It's incredible. He manipulates the 2 guys who have the advantage. And Steph is great playing team defense. His ability to shoot into passing lanes. He has quick hands. There's a reason, like, his MVP season in 2015-16, not only did he lead the league, he led the league in scoring and steals that season. Like, he was the league leader in steals that season. He is a high intellect defender. And steals don't mean everything, but he doesn't play out of position. It's like you're going to have to really beat him. He's not going to take himself out of place defensively, like you see guys like Russell Westbrook do. Or James Harden with dumb swipes at the ball. He doesn't commit dumb fouls like they do. He doesn't loaf in transition defense. Or, once again, take some dumb swipe instead of actually playing defense in transition. He understands his rotations. Like, he's locked in that regard. He is limited defensively because he's a point guard. He's 6'3", 190. And he's not like a hyper athlete. But he's solid. And consistent. And he reads what the offense is doing and will snuff out passing lanes. And make his rotations before teams expect him to. It's like Curry's an underrated defensive player. He's not an elite defensive player, but his mind allows him to make big defensive plays. And disrupt what offenses are doing at times. And when you're the most dangerous offensive weapon in basketball, being able to make an impact defensively or hold or carry your own or just carry enough weight defensively is extremely, extremely valuable. So, once again, there's my Curry for MVP case there. Trying to think of some other NBA news before I hop over to the Brown trade. Or, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get into the Brown trade. Ding. So I've got this pulled up, of course. Orlando Brown to the Chiefs. So originally, and let me orient this the way I want. Okay. So the Ravens, or let's see, yeah. So the Ravens get 3 picks in this trade. So they're getting number 31. They're getting, well, they acquired actually 4 picks, but they're getting 31 from the Chiefs in the first round. Pick number 94, which is the Chiefs' 3rd round pick, and 136, which is a 4th round pick, and they're getting a 5th round selection next year. So the Ravens getting a lot of draft capital for Brown. This is what was interesting, because originally that was all we knew. That we knew what the Ravens were getting. We did not realize that the Chiefs were getting anything more than Orlando Brown at first. So the Chiefs are getting Brown, which Brown is in the last year of his rookie deal as a second-round pick in 2017, I think it was. 2018. But they're also getting the Ravens second-round pick, number 58, and a sixth-rounder in 2022. So basically, the Ravens are moving up 27 spots in the draft. They're getting an extra third-round pick and a fourth-round pick. And they're moving up from the sixth round in 2022 to somewhere in the fifth round in 2022 for Brown. Like I said, originally it was reported that the Ravens sending a couple picks in exchange weren't part of it, and that's been a growing theme in recent seasons. Is that teams, instead of just outright trading draft picks, I mean, they do, but you'll see a lot of teams, instead of losing a pick, they'll just switch where they're picking. So they'll drop like a round or two, depending on what kind of value they put in players, or they'll take multiple picks and they'll drop down. Or you see like in the Marcus Cannon trade and the Trent Brown trades, the team that gets the player gets a later round selection. So it's basically they're just trading down the draft board based on the value of the player. So you don't end up losing out on the number of picks you have. It's just draft position. So this is a big deal. And Brown gets to be a left tackle. Because that matters so much. One source has said that the Ravens have expressed confidence they can replace Brown with free agent Alejandro Villanueva. Although another source added later that the team has no expectations with the veteran lineman and will explore all options, including the draft, to fill the position. Villanueva, a 6-year starting left tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, visited the Ravens on Thursday, so it's possible they signed Villanueva. Brown, who turns 25 on May 2nd, has started 42 games for Baltimore after being a third-round pick in the 2018 draft. That's right, third-round pick, not second. He's allowed no sacks or quarterback hits in 700 snaps at left tackle last season, according to Pro Football Focus. And he was really great at right tackle, and he started off. Originally, he played a few games at right guard before kicking out the tackle. I think this is a big deal for the Chiefs because they needed a tackle. But this is a very deep tackle class. Okay, here's where I was going at. Because I wanted to talk about what the Ravens could do with the draft capital they have. So the Ravens lose out on Brown at right tackle. I'm looking at their offensive line now. Let's see. So Ronnie Stanley will be back. Ronnie Stanley, before getting hurt, had established himself as one of the best left tackles in football. They signed Kevin Zeitler in free agency. They drafted Tyree Phillips last year in the third round, and they've got him, or our lads has him slated as their right tackle right now. And that wouldn't necessarily be terrible. They have picked up Andre Smith, who, if this is the Andre Smith I'm thinking it is, yep, he's still going. So Andre Smith was originally a first-round drafted offensive tackle back, man, how many years? This is 10 years ago. Yep. He was, sixth pick in the first round in 2009. So actually, well, he missed a year. So let's see, player history, da-da-da. Wait a second. Oh, that was him hitting injured reserve that year. Okay. So, let's see. Maybe he didn't skip out a year. Oh, yeah, he signed with them last year, but then opted out. So he would be an 11. This would be year 12 for him. So he's going to do year 11. Okay, so they've got Andre Smith on their roster, who at this stage of his career is a swing or maybe is a backup tackle, but probably a better like interior lineman. Great run blocker. That does help their depth a lot. Actually, they've got him listed as their backup right tackle. Okay, that makes sense. So I don't know. I still think they should probably pick up a tackle, but Phillips has a lot of upside, although maybe he'd be better off at guard as well. They seem to really like Bradley Bozeman. They also drafted Ben Bredesen out of, I think it was Michigan in the 4th round last year. You have Oklahoma guard Ben Powers, who's a 4th round pick in 2019. They've got Patrick McCarry starting at center. Although Bozeman could slide into center if they wanted. They might feel really good about their interior line now, to be honest. Or at least about their prospects there. Oh, that's an ad. Gosh darn it. But yeah, so if they were to sign Andre Villanueva, he'd slide in at right tackle, and then you'd have a really nice deep line there, to be honest. At least one that I would feel really comfortable with if I was them. Come on. Would that go away? There we go. Now I close that. All right. So, anyway, with 2 first-round picks, they've got 27-31. You're looking at their receivers right now. Sammy Watkins, okay, he's cool, but he's injured a lot. Marquise Brown, if he could stay healthy, he has elite speed and shiftiness. Miles Boykin has a lot of potential. Really hadn't come together yet. Devin Duvernay, I really expect to be their main slot receiver this year. Unless they draft a big guy, then that probably is Brown, but Duvernay should still have a really good role. I like Duvernay a lot. He's fast. He's got good hands. Beyond that, you got James Proche II, who they drafted in the 6th round last year. I like as kind of like a depth slot option. They brought in Deion Kane, and the Colts really liked him back when he first, if I'm remembering him as the right player, when they got him, I think it was like undrafted as a late round pick, but then he tore his ACL going into the season. But that's been his big thing. Benjamin Victor, Jalen Moore, Like, I expect the Ravens to select a receiver, and I kind of expect them to pick a receiver early, which I know they drafted Brown in the 1st round 2 years ago. But it wouldn't shock me to see them do that because they have a really good roster. So guys who would be options, 27-31. I know I did like draft guides, but this trade kind of changes up what the Ravens and Chiefs are going to do or will be able to do. So I'm looking at the Ravens with those selections. You're putting yourself at a position where you might be able to get a Jalen Phillips and a Terrace Marshall and a Rashad Bateman. Or a Rashad Bateman, you know, or get yourself a Joseph Asai, Azeez Ojulari. Although they tend to really like to draft their pass rushers in the second, third rounds, but if I'm being honest, now that you trade out the second round, although there are guys in the third round who I really like Cam Sample, who I think really fits what they want to do there or on the edge. And then you've got guys like Patrick Jones, although he's more of a quickness or speed kind of guy. Maybe Emerson Smith in the third round, but they might not be picking high enough to get a hold of Smith. That just depends, though. And then you've got, who is it? Malcolm Kuntz out of Buffalo, which he might have risen to the second round range for some. I think this draft is going to be very interesting in terms of like who goes where, because I think with how scouting worked this year, I think there's a lot of talk that there might be a little less groupthink among the scouting community. I don't know, because my thing is there's always guys who go higher than we expect and lower than we expect. But there's a lot of talk that this year is going to be a little more wild, wild west about where teams have different guys ranked. Kuntz reminds me a lot, actually, of another former Buffalo player, Khalil Mack. I'm not saying he's as good as Mack, but he has similar build, and he has really, really good tape. And I think he'd be a little... He's not exactly the Ravens, like, prototypical or edge, like 3-4 outside linebacker target, but I think he'd fit the way they play really well. So, and if he's available in the third round, he's undersized for what they usually do, but Chris Rumpf of Duke would also be in terms of the mental side of the game, be a great fit for the Ravens. And because he's a little small, he's a little over 6'3", 235. He's not huge. So I don't know if he'd necessarily be a fit for the Ravens, but he's a player I like. But if they were to go edge in the first, Jalen Phillips might be available at one of those two picks. Guys that I know will be available, and another guy who would, I think, fit the Ravens perfectly would be Zaven Collins. Zaven might be around right there. If we're talking like offensive tackles, I mean, you've got a bunch of guys who could land in that range. I don't think Tevin Jenkins will be around, but he would be a perfect plug-and-play starter at right tackle if they could draft him there. Some other guys who will be available in that range. You have Liam Eichenberg and Jalen Mayfield, Dylan Radins. And the Ravens could use this first-round pick and trade down into the second round and get more picks. Because, I mean, the Ravens, they typically operate on a trade-down basis. So don't be shocked if they get even more picks. The Ravens are, I would argue the Ravens are the best team in the league at manipulating the draft board. Even better than the Patriots. Because the Ravens do a better job of, in my opinion, hitting on their picks. I feel like their scouting department does a better job. And that they target players at better values. That's just my opinion. You don't see them like picking a random kicker in the 5th round. You don't see them drafting tight or day 3 prospects typically in round 3, or guys who knows where they're going to go in like round 4 or 5, like, or if they're going to be drafted in like rounds 4 and 5. Not that the Patriots don't hit sometimes on those, but I just typically the Ravens come away with better value. Like they're getting Geno Stone in the 7th round, a guy who I had as a 3rd, 4th round safety. They're getting him in the 7th round. So anyway, so you've got those kind of guys, and Sam Cosmi, man. So I was looking at Cosmi's pro day. Dude ran a 4.8940 at, I think it was 314, 315. He's like, and he's around 6'5", 6'5", 315, 4.89. Like, bruh, he's got the tools. I get why a lot of people have him in the 1st round, and his penalties were way down last year, which may have been a little bit of the reason why, in some ways, it seemed like his tape was cleaner last year. I think he really tried to not get as many holding calls, and that allowed a little more pressure than he was getting before. So if he can find some kind of middle ground and be a little maybe sneakier about when he maybe gets a hold of some guys at times. But Cosmi's a really good prospect, and he should be, and I've settled on he is definitely somewhere between Tevin Jenkins and Alex Leatherwood, Brady Christensen for me. He's definitely on the level of prospect as Jalen Mayfield, athletically speaking. Well, I mean athletically, and he's probably now like he and Mayfield are probably neck and neck for the 5th tackle for me after Jenkins. Like, I think I'm moving Cosmi ahead of Eichenberg, because I think Cosmi he's more athletic, and he has much better potential for mirroring tackles, or top edge rushers than Liam Eichenberg. So yeah, I mean, the Ravens have a ton of choices, and including trading down and still getting one of those guys in that Mayfield to Radden's range at tackle. If they were to trade down into like the early 2nd, if someone was wanting to, early to mid 2nd, if someone was wanting to move up in the 1st round, and they'd also get extra picks. If we're looking kind of on the other side of the ball, like defense, like I talked about when going over them, their defensive front is just brutally great. I mean, you've got Calais Campbell, Brandon Williams, arguably the best nose tackle in the league, Derek Wolfe. You have Justin Ellis, who's a really good run-plugging kind of nose tackle type. Justin Matabuke, who they got as a steal in the 3rd round last year. I think he'll have a bigger role this year. He has great disruption potential, and he's learning behind Campbell and Wolfe, who are perfect mentors for a player like him. Campbell, definitely more of an athlete than Wolfe, but Wolfe is a really, really good 5 technique. Chauncey Rivers, who they really like as a depth option. And then they've got Broderick Washington, who they drafted in the 5th round last year out of Ohio State. He's got a lot of potential. Like, their front is great. What they're looking at here is upgrading their edge, because Jalen Ferguson still really hasn't popped yet after being a guy that I really liked that they drafted in the 3rd round in 2019. Tyus Bowser was a 2nd round pick in 2017 who they brought back. They've got him penciled in the start across from Pernell McPhee, who they originally drafted in the 5th round in 2011. He went to the Bears for a bit and is now back. But McPhee's not the guy he used to be. It hasn't been for some time. let's see who else they got over here. And then Aaron Adeye, I'm not super familiar with him, to be honest. So they need edge rushing depth. And I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted multiple edge players in this draft with all the picks they have. Like I was saying, if they're in the first round, because of their 3-4 scheme, they tend to like power guys, but Azeez Ojulari would bring a new, unique element to that team with his just incredible speed off the edge. Joseph Asai, I think, would be a really good. He's strong, but he's also got a great first step. I think Asai could potentially be the best 3-4, like all-around 3-4 backer in the draft, or Zaven Collins. Zaven Collins would be a great fit here as as a do-it-all player. He's better in coverage. I think Osai's better at getting after the quarterback and making disruptive plays in the run game. But he and Collins would both be great picks for the Ravens. Osai, I think, will be available. Collins is a little more of a question. I said Ojulari. Jalen Phillips, because of the concussion stuff, might be available here, and he's the best, in my opinion, he's the best edge player in the draft. But I have a feeling he won't get further down than Cleveland. But it depends on who Cleveland decides to take, because Zaven Collins could be a target for Cleveland. And Cleveland now could go interior line because they cut Sheldon Richardson, which for teams that need inside play, Sheldon Richardson's is on the market. Geno Atkins, I know he's a kind of up there as a veteran, but like Geno, I think, can still get it, and especially in a rotation role. Love to see my Titans pick one of Richardson or Atkins up, depending on the price, just to give us more depth. We kind of like our starters, but those guys would give us great rotational depth. So yeah, those are options in the first. If we're talking, which right now they don't have a second round. I'm pretty sure they don't have a second round pick right now. So if we're talking like third round, I already kind of ran through some guys' names, which they could use some of these picks to move up again, or to acquire a second round pick. Although that's not really, or not typically, the Ravens' MO. And they are never shy about being loaded up on corners, and they are right now. But Marcus Peters is, I think, coming to the end of his contract, or kind of close, or at least to the guaranteed money. They've got Marlon Humphrey, who they've extended. Tavon Young, when he's healthy, is a really good slot corner. They've got Anthony Averett, who they spent a fourth-round pick on in 2018. He's really athletic. He's not amazing, but he's athletic. You've got Jimmy Smith, who they keep around. Smith is a solid corner, first-round pick in 2011. He's had a great career. That is great depth. Iman Marshall out of USC, who they drafted in the fourth round in 2019, who I liked back then. He's just had some injury issues, but solid, like, kind of all-around corner, physical player. But with Smith being, on the wrong side of 30, I think this would probably be the Ravens are going to spend a pick at cornerback somewhere, and they could in the first round. They are not shy about investing draft capital in the cornerback position. As you can see, between Young, Averett, and Marshall, that's 3 fourth-round picks in the span of 4 drafts that they spent on corners. And you're looking at Humphrey was a first-round pick in 2017. And I'm pretty sure there's some guys they drafted in the, on day 3 that are over the past few years who aren't on this roster as well. I can't remember his name, but there's another guy that I'm missing here that I think they're really good at safety. Chuck Clark was great for them last year. it's one of the reasons they they cut Earl Thomas. They like Deshaun Elliott. Anthony Levine is pretty decent safety depth. Not super familiar with Jordan Richards, to be honest. Geno Stone was one of my steals of the draft last year. And then Nigel Warrior they got as an undrafted free agent last year out of my Tennessee Vols. Like, I think they're decent at safety, or pretty good at safety, with all these guys being young and having upside. I don't see why you would they don't necessarily need a safety, but they could draft one, but I don't think they will. I think they're probably going to draft a corner in the mid rounds. So there you're looking at Trey Brown of Oklahoma. There are good corners who are going to fall in this draft as well. If you're looking at third, you've got Trey Brown, Taylor out of Washington, Aaron Robinson out of UCF, who's a great athlete. Kerry Vincent out of LSU. Just a few names there. So yeah, I mean the Ravens, like I said, the Ravens have a lot of options, and if we're talking wide receiver, you've got Bateman, you've got Marshall, or Rashad Bateman, Terrace Marshall. If you're looking for which between Duvernay and Brown and Proche, I don't know why you would necessarily be looking at undersized guys necessarily, but like guys who have talent, who are going to be productive players. Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore would give you just an explosive all-over weapon. Tony's a little taller than those guys. Although, like I said, I think they would go with a Marshall or a Bateman type. Further down the board, you've got maybe Diami Brown's available at some point in the third, or is available in third round. Although I just don't see how he gets out of second at this point. Other bigger body guys, Nico Collins down the board. If you're looking for like technician type players you could get, late in the third, fourth round, you're looking at Cade Johnson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe Dwayne Eskridge is available like in the late third round. I don't know. He's more of an explosive type player than those guys. Once again, kind of like a small slot guy. So, another guy like who now probably because of his 40 might be available in the fourth round. Seth Williams out of Auburn. So, I honestly, based on the receivers they have, I love the fit of Bateman or Marshall on this team, personally, or Diami Brown. Those three guys I think would be amazing fits for the Ravens. And if I'm looking at their middle linebackers, they spent a first-round pick on Patrick Queen last year and a third-round pick on Malik Jefferson. They have, like, their starter pair. They've got a solid veteran backup, LJ Fort. I mean, they could target a middle linebacker, but it would probably be a day 3 type guy. So, and then let's look at the Chiefs roster now and just kind of see, like, tackle was their biggest need, and they just filled it in a big way. We'll go over their depth, or we won't spend as much time on them as we did on the Ravens. Boom. So, for the Chiefs, you're looking at I would say that they have a little bit of a need at receiver now because they've lost Watkins. They do still have Demarcus Robinson. But beyond their top three, Byron Pringle, okay. Joe Fortson, who? Gary Dieter, who? I don't know any of these guys except for Chad Williams that I've come across so far. Antonio Callaway's deep on their bench, and Tajay Sharp. I know who those guys are. But they could use a bigger bodied receiver. They like speed, but the Chiefs now have multiple second round picks. So we're looking at really their biggest needs here. Finding like their two biggest needs, see what they're going to do. So they've acquired Orlando Brown. They have Matthias Rankin, who they brought in, who's basically a swing lineman. Joe Tunney, who they signed away from New England in the offseason. Austin Blythe, who they have signed as an unrestricted or as a free agent to be their starting center. Kyle Long, they signed him. He's come out of retirement. He's going to be their starting right guard. And then they brought in Mike Rimmers last season, but he's really best as a swing tackle or a guard. He didn't look great in the Super Bowl, but I think that was mostly because he was playing on the left side rather than the right side. And the guy who started that game, who started that game for them? Is he still on the roster? I'm looking. I think it was Andrew Wiley started at tackle for them in that game, and he got absolutely decimated during that game. It was really bad. So now, one thing that could help their line a little bit if Laurent Duvernay-Tardif comes back. He was a starting guard. He opted out last year because he's a doctor. And, or I believe because I think he finished his doctorate in whatever he was doing during his playing career or whatever. But he was a starter up until this year. He decided to, help doing whatever during the pandemic. Let's see, Darrell Williams. Now, wait a second. Is this the Darrell Williams I'm thinking? No, this is a different Darrell Williams, I think. Yep, because the one I'm thinking of, I think he's still re-signed with the Bills. Yeah, this is a different guy. Because that Darrell Williams is out of Oklahoma. Okay. Just wanted to double check that. Oh, dadgummit. The ad hit. Screw your ad. So their offensive line, in terms of depth, they could probably improve on the interior some. Although, Duvernay-Tardif and Wisniewski being back would definitely help there. But Tunney and Long was a former Pro Bowler. I'm pretty sure Tunney's been one of the best interior linemen in the league past few years. Blythe is a solid center. Orlando Brown is a huge upgrade at tackle. And then behind them, Prince Tega Wanogo, he played at Auburn. I really liked him. He ended up falling until like the 6th, 7th round. I think, was it 2019 or last year? I think he was drafted by the Eagles. I like him as a developmental player. They drafted Lucas Niang out of TCU in the 3rd round last year, and he didn't really play a lot. So they have some young options on the roster. So we'll see. They might not target tackle now. Of course, they've got Travis Kelce at tight end. Ricky Seals-Jones is a good backup option. They brought in Blake Bell at tight end. I'm going to say I doubt they draft one. I think they like their quarterback situation. Like, behind Mahomes, Henne was okay during the playoffs. They had signed Jordan Ta'amu last year as a developmental option. He may end up being the second quarterback this year. And then behind him, you got Anthony Gordon, who once threw for over 900 yards in a college football game at Washington State and lost. That wasn't his fault. Running back, I loved Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year. Darrell Williams, sure. Darwin Thompson was like a guy people were really loving going into last year, and people see him as like some really, really good like rotational running back. They could draft a running back late. Wouldn't shock me. So, but I would say if they're wide receiver and I don't think they have to draft tackles if they think they can develop the players on the roster. But maybe offensive line on day 3 now. Unless they just really like one of the offensive, because there are starting level offensive tackles, like multiple in this draft. And they might be able to get one of them at one of their spots in the second round. Really, they should probably be focusing on, honestly, I'd say receiver is a bigger need now. And then on defense for the Chiefs, Frank Clark is overrated and overpaid. Chris Jones is great inside. Derek Nandi is a solid kind of bigger nose tackle type. Tim Ward, Austin Edwards, Taco Charlton, tools, but they don't really have I think they really need to work on their edge on defense. Let's see. Nani solid nose tackle. They did sign Jaron Reed after the Seahawks cut him. That really helps their interior defense. He's a really good third defensive tackle. I'm going to get this play so I can cut this or close this out in a second. Let's see. Tershawn Wharton. They drafted Kalen Saunders in the third round in 2019. He was a huge. Mel Kiper is a very big fan of Saunders' potential. Maybe he could still develop into something going into year 3. We'll see, but I'd say if they're going to focus anywhere, it should be on the edge of this defense. Anthony Hitchens still one of the most overpaid players in the NFL. Willie Gay, they're really hoping improves in year 2. He's got a lot of potential. Projecting improvement for him wouldn't be surprising. Ben Neiman played a lot for them last year, and he's, let's just say you can do better. Darius Harris, not super familiar with. They drafted Dorian O'Daniel in the third round 2018, and he hasn't developed. I think linebacker's a huge need for them, and in my opinion, this is a really good off-ball linebacker class compared to some recent years. Like I said, but now they don't have as much draft capital in the third and fourth rounds, so they might have to reach for a guy in the second round a little bit, or move down from one of their second round picks to pick up more guys. I mean, some guys that could be available like late in the second round who would be worthy. If Nick Bolton fell somehow, I would love that value better there. But he's got to develop more as a coverage player. A guy like Monty Rice, maybe a little bit rich, but he does fit a need. Jabril Cox out of LSU, another guy who I think would be a little rich at the end of the second round, but he would fit that need. But maybe you're going to wait and you're just going to target guys on day 3. With that being said, we get to their secondary, and they like Rashad Fenton. He was pretty solid last year. You're looking at Travarius Ward. Okay. L'Jarius Sneed played really well as a rookie last year and are coming out of the 4th round. I think he's actually going to be the starter. At the very least in nickel packages. They took a flyer on DeAndre Baker. If he can get his life together, he's got a lot of upside. At safety, you're hoping you're not starting Daniel Sorensen. Tyrann Mathieu, obviously, one of the biggest names at the position. Juan Thornhill, who they took in the second round in 2019. He's dealt with injuries and some other issues. I actually think he's going to be a guy who's going to take a big step up this year. I think he's going to be their other starting safety for most of the year. Armani Watts just hasn't really developed into what they were hoping he would as a 4th round pick in 2018. But maybe he takes some kind of step up. So I'm saying for the secondary, really corner and safety are needs, but corner's the bigger need, or at least what I would target. And then it's wide receiver, linebacker, safety. I almost forgot edge. Edge is a spot they should have, or that has really good value at the back end of the second round. So, but corner and D end are their definite 2 biggest positions of need. So, moving on from that, let's get into. So here's an interesting story I found. So the Supreme Court has declined to hear this brain damage case that some former WWE wrestlers have brought against WWE. I was looking at the names, and the biggest name that I saw was Viscera Nielsen Frazier, who his wife is part of the suit. He died back in 2014. He was also known as Big Daddy V. Not a big star. None of these guys were big names. He was the only one I remembered. And maybe I remember Luther Reigns. But basically, they're bringing this suit because WWE didn't act to protect them from head injuries. And the Supreme Court has decided not to hear this case. And the Supreme Court didn't even explain why. They just dismissed it. They usually give an explanation. This was the last remaining lawsuit in an array of litigation originally filed 6 years ago in Connecticut against the WWE over concussions and other injuries. The WWE is based in Stamford, Connecticut. More than 50 former wrestlers, most of them stars in the 80s and 90s, which is probably why I don't know most of them, sued the WWE, saying they suffered repeated head injuries, including concussions that led to long-term brain damage. Yeah, getting dropped on your head a bunch even with some of the stuff like being kind of fake and sold, like most of the punches and stuff, or a lot of them, like you're taking hits to the head, you're taking impact injuries. So a lot of the reasons a lot of these cases get dismissed is not because of it's not because that there isn't damage being done and people are just thinking, or because people think wrestling's fake. It's because, to some degree, common sense here. Repeated trauma and injury to a body part is going to lead to its degradation. If you keep doing stuff on an injured knee, eventually that knee is going to decay. It's common sense. Obviously, taking repeated trauma to the brain could cause negative effects. And of course, back then, it's not like people knew what we knew now about the science. So it's also, no one's taking or going to take action against people for not necessarily taking something seriously that at the time we didn't know as much as we do now. You can't put a retroactive standard on 1980 based on the information we now have in 2020, 2021. That's stupid. Other wrestlers who filed suit were Jimmy Okay, why didn't they put Superfly Snuka? That's a big name, although I guess he wasn't maybe in this lawsuit. The Road Warrior, or one of the Road Warriors, Animal, Joseph Laurinaitis. That's still not, or he's a huge name. Mr. Wonderful. King Kong Bundy. And Mr. Fuji were all a part of some of these suits, but I'm guessing not this one. Snuka and Fujiyama died in 2017 and 2016, respectively, and were diagnosed with CTE after their deaths. King Kong Bundy and Animal died in 2019 and 2020, respectively, of undisclosed causes. Other plaintiffs have dementia and other illnesses, the lawsuit said. Several lawsuits were dismissed in 2018 by the U.S. District Judge Vanessa Bryant. Interesting. In Hartford, Connecticut, Bryant ruled there was no evidence the WWE knew while the plaintiffs were wrestling that concussions or head blows during matches caused CTE or other long-term injuries. And that's true, because they didn't. CTE wasn't even like a term that that really came up until like I was in high school, really. And and athletes in general, even back in the day, like didn't take concussions seriously. It's like, oh, I'm dazed and confused right now, but I can function, so I'm just gonna go back out and play. That's what you did. It wasn't because people forced you to, because a lot of guys did it. A lot of people regret the fact that there weren't people telling them no, or that they didn't listen to people telling them that maybe they shouldn't. She also ruled the lawsuits that were the subject of Monday's Supreme Court decision were filed after the statute of limitations expired. Huh. So okay. And I'm not necessarily doing this in defense of like WWE and how they treat maybe their performers, whatever. I'm just saying we didn't know back then, and most people didn't really care until more recent years. Like really the last 10, 15, 20 years. So anyway, so that was dismissed. That was kind of a big story today. And as someone myself who grew up watching WWE, watches AEW every week, I'm a pretty big wrestling fan. Oh yeah, and this was another big story. So Kim Mulkey, um, longtime Baylor women's basketball coach, spent 21 years there, won 3 national titles. She has left Baylor and is now the head women's coach at LSU, which was huge because she built Baylor into a powerhouse. That women's team had never been to the NCAA tournament before 2000 when she got there. They only missed the tournament once in 21 years, and they won the titles in 05, 2012, and I think it was 2019. LSU's women's coach, after 10 years, decided to step down from the position to pursue other options, which the rumor is she's going to become like the team president for the Las Vegas Aces WNBA, or the WNBA team, which to me actually seems like a downgrade of a position in my opinion. But let's see. But yeah, so that really shook like the women's basketball world, because I mean that's a huge change right there. Because she built one of the powerhouses of college basketball over the last 2 decades. And LSU hadn't been quite as impactful in recent years, but when I was in middle school and high school, LSU was actually a pretty big deal. And I would argue we're probably Tennessee's biggest or most consistent rival in the SEC during those days. So let's see some other embattled Big Ditch steps down as Rockies GM. Oh yeah, something or Brig. Oh wait, British. Oh, my eyes are terrible. Let's see. DeMarcus Cousins has signed a contract with the Clippers for the rest of the season. That's cool. Kyler Murray says the Cardinals must master little things to win. Okay. What? I'm going to get into that. Jets Ellers out for remainder of regular season. Oh, that's Winnipeg Jets hockey. Oh, this was big. Sean Lee of the Cowboys has chosen to retire. That was loud. After 11 seasons. So, a second-round pick in 2010 out of Penn State. Lee was a 2-time Pro Bowler in 15 and 16, an unquestioned leader of the defense for most of his career. It's been a complete honor, Lee told ESPN. I've been blessed to play in the incredible or to play for the incredible Jones family with such great coaches and teammates that I love like brothers. I loved every minute playing and tried to pour my heart and soul into winning and helping my teammates at all costs. To say the injuries were frustrating would be an understatement, and I'm sure that's the case. But the support I received through them all was humbling, and the lessons I learned battling adversity will last a lifetime. There are always regrets, but I'm proud of what I was able to accomplish, and I leave this game grateful. And yeah, injuries were a big issue with Lee, but he was really great when he was healthy. So 34, he played 11 seasons. He led the Cowboys in tackles in 2011 and 2015 through 17. He owns 5 of the top 7 tackle games in team history, including a record 22 versus the Giants 2016. He also had 14 career interceptions, 2 returned for touchdowns, 5 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles, 59 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. He was credited with 995 tackles for his career, good for 8th in team history. He averaged 8.4 tackles per game, the most among the top 10 tacklers in team history, because if he had played if he had not missed as many games, he would have been way higher on those lists. Darren Woodson, who is the franchise leader with 1,350 tackles, averaged 7.6 per game. Lee missed time with hamstring, wrist, toe, neck, knee, and core muscle injuries as well as concussions. He missed the 2014 season because of a torn ACL, which was a devastating injury. But then he came back and was one of the best linebackers in football from 2015 to 17. He played in just 9 games last season after undergoing sports hernia surgery. Ouch. He was feeling better at the end of the year and contemplated a return for a 12th season, but I guess he decided against it. Impact off the field was just as great. Let's see. And I'm sure he has had a big role in the development of Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith, 2 of the more talented young linebackers in the league. Lee's decision continues as an offseason shift for the Cowboys in longevity and leadership, as defensive lineman Tyrone Crawford, 9-year veteran, also decided to retire. And the team moved on from 16-year long snapper LP Ledanour. I'm going to be honest. I kind of wish long snappers didn't count towards your active roster in the NFL. They're like so specialized. Like those guys do nothing else. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being dumb, but DeMarcus Lawrence, second-round pick in 2014, is the longest tenured defensive player on the team. Randy Gregory, a second-rounder in 2015, is the second longest. When Randy Gregory is your second longest tenured player on your defense, that's interesting. Not necessarily that having been around a long time makes things better, but it does show kind of like, wow, they've got a lot of new faces on defense. Like a lot. Okay, so Kansas City Chiefs Sean Culkin becomes first NFL player to convert his entire salary to Bitcoin. If he makes the Kansas City Chiefs roster to begin the season, tight end Sean Culkin will be the first NFL player to convert all of his salary to Bitcoin. Culkin, who is trying to be a backup behind starter Travis Kelce, would be paid $920,000 in salary by the Chiefs in U.S. dollars, but in turn will convert it to Bitcoin. That'd be a really great investment. But he's got some work to do to make that roster. Let's see, what did we got for NBA headlines? How the NBA's 5 full-time women referees continue to push for progress. I'm just saying, when this is the front page story in the middle of the NBA regular season, and I say the middle as we're coming in for kind of the last stretch of the season, this is your biggest story? Gender-related activism. So, Larry Nance breaks thumb. 3 others injured. Man, the Cavs can't take... I mean, Nance just got back. Broken thumb. COVID-related shortage of referees for the NBA. That's not great. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, Steph Curry, NBA record 85 threes in a month. The Orlando Magic coach, Steve Clifford, to miss multiple games. I'm assuming because of, well, I don't know if it's COVID or what. So let's do this and this. So, to miss multiple games after, positive coronavirus test. Sucks for him. Let's see, whose record did he break? In Sunday night's game against Sacramento Kings, he hit 7 more 3-pointers in a 4-point victory to set a new NBA record for threes in a month with 85. The previous record was held by Brooklyn Nets James Harden, who hit 82 in November 2019 with the Rockets. Like I figured, it was probably Harden who had the record. For Curry, who's averaging 38.2 points per game this month, the shots are falling easier than ever. I mean, it is ridiculous, like the way he's shooting right now. Let's see. Curry's month of April has already included 2 major milestones. Of course, on April 12th, he passed Wilt Chamberlain for the most points in Warriors history all time. For all of you my age, Wilt Chamberlain actually played most of his career for the Warriors, who actually originally were from Philadelphia and then moved to San Francisco for a year, but spent most of their time in Oakland. They're now back in San Fran. Because when they first moved over there, they called themselves the San Francisco Warriors. But Wilt Chamberlain played most of his career there before going. I think he went to the Lakers. I think he only played for those 2 franchises, but I need to look that back up. So he's most iconic for his time with the Lakers, but he was responsible for the first great run of the Warriors franchise back in the day. The second came during a stretch from March 29th to April 19th, when Curry became the first player in NBA history at age 33 or older to score 30 or more points in 11 straight games. Okay, I thought that was a typo. So when I first read it, it said becoming or passing Los Angeles Lakers legend Kobe Bryant, who scored at least 30 in 10 straight games in December 2012. So in the article, when he broke that, it said, Bryant did it in 2002, which I was like, well, Bryant would have been like 23, 24, 2002, something like that. Or, let's see, or maybe 25. He would have been like in his mid-20s. So that makes more sense. I was like, well, I guess Kobe had a streak of 10, and that was the last time someone did. But I'm like, that doesn't sound right either. Or passing him on a list appeal. But yeah, so Kobe Bryant did that in 2012. So, I mean, it is crazy how good Curry has been. I wonder if they're going to say how many games he has left. Curry finished with 37 points against the Kings. He is shooting 52.9% from the field in April and 47% from beyond the arc, which, considering the amount of threes he's taking a game, that's insane. Let's see. Let's kind of go down and see. I just want to see where they have. Wow, they have the Mavericks at 9th in the rankings. Although they've been playing really well. I think we're overrating the Knicks if we have them as a top 10 team. Personally. Like, if they went head-to-head with the Blazers, like, in a playoff series, like, with the Blazers at full strength, the Blazers would win. And I would say the Heat are a better team, like, come playoff time. The Celtics are actually playing better because they were below 500. Now they've dropped 5 spots. I guess maybe they lost a couple games in the last week, but the Celtics have a higher ceiling. My Grizzlies are up to 31 and 28, and we're solidly 15th. I think that's more than fair, to be honest. Of course, the Hornets are dropping because, and the Hornets should probably be lower, like, Ball is out, although and Gordon Hayward is still out. So, or Gordon Hayward's out. They are going to be falling down these rankings. Like, and this is the thing with this whole play-in tourney, because I'm using this as a segue to rant about the play-in tourney. I'm just going to count. I'm actually going to go through here, and I'm going to look at these just to count, like, how many or where we are in the standings. So, the Jazz, who are just playing ridiculously well. So, you've got, let's just see, this. So, the Nets are number 1 in the East in these power rankings. Got the Sixers number 2. The Bucks number 3. They're at 6th. Then we come down here. The Knicks are at 4. The Hawks are at 5. They have the same record. The Heat, 32 and 29. 6th best team in 13th. Celtics, 32 and 29. They're in 14th right now. The Hornets are in 17th. And I think they're overrating some of these East teams. Because I said, what, the Heat were 5? Or, no, we're 6. So 7. Then the Hornets are 8th. And the Pacers are 9th. The Wizards had been kind of surging, have been kind of surging lately. But they're still 10th place. They're 27-33. But that's what I'm saying. So let's just look at teams 7 through 10. In the East right now. So you have the Celtics and the Heat, who are kind of tied for 6th. But one of them is basically the top team. So then you have the Hornets, who are without 2 of their best players and have been skidding. 30 and 30. The Pacers, who've dealt with injuries all year. 29-31. The Wizards, 27 and 33. And after Beal and their only other good player is Westbrook, who's been better since finally getting, I guess, fully healthy. But I feel like they're going to fall off again. And then the Raptors here, who just, everyone's been waiting for them to go on a run. They're not. Are we excited about teams that are 29 and 31, 27 and 33, 25 and 35, fighting over the chance to for like the 9th and 10th spots? And then the Hornets even, as I guess the 8th best team in the East at 30 and 30. Are we excited about this play-in tournament? Like, the potential for these teams? Because I don't care. I care more about them fighting for the 8th seed. And then if you're looking at it in that perspective, the Raptors are 25 and 35. They're a full 5 games back of the Hornets. That's not totally insurmountable at this point, but there's not a lot of runway to go. And the Hornets are without players, but the Raptors haven't been playing great. The Wizards are only 3 games back of that. But I'd rather just see these teams playing for the 8th spot, not some stupid gimmick play-in tourney. And in a way, it kind of makes sense in the West, which you also have the Bulls, 25 and 35. They're only 5 games back as well. And see, I think the Raptors are overrated in this case. Because personally, I think the Pelicans are a much better team. And I think if they were playing in the Eastern Conference instead of the West, the Pelicans would be better than 26 and 34. The Kings' defense is just terrible. For sure. The Thunder aren't really trying to win games. They're trying to develop young players, and that's honestly is working really well for them right now. Then you have the Pistons, who are bad. Minnesota's actually been playing a little bit better recently, which is probably to their detriment. And then you have the Magic, who are just awful. And then the Rockets, who aren't even an NBA team at this point. But I'm actually going to pull up the standings here real quick. Just the pure standings, because I want to look, or an easier look here at kind of what we're looking at. So here's this play-in tourney area. And I guess right now the Celtics have the tiebreaker over the Heat. These are legit teams who dealt with different issues this year. The Celtics have had some weird malaise and injury stuff. The Heat as well. These two teams are going to be more dangerous come playoff time. The Hawks have been surging. The Knicks are a good team. But if the Knicks are the fourth best team in the conference, that says more about the conference, I think. Randall's been having a great year. They have some great players. Tibbs is a great coach. And when you get guys who really want to play hard and buy in, his teams will be good. That's the problem in Minnesota. The problem in Minnesota is a culture problem, and it probably stems from Karl Anthony Towns. I love him as a player. But to me, you look at what Jimmy Butler achieved in Miami, and you think of the players he was playing with in Minnesota when they barely made the playoffs. Towns and Wiggins. Now, Wiggins has gone to Golden State and is playing really good basketball. The best of his career. Towns is still in Minnesota, and they still have a culture issue. They brought in D'Angelo Russell. That obviously hasn't helped. Which they've changed coaches. Ryan Saunders obviously wasn't the guy there. And the new coach, I think, you're seeing things getting tightened up a little bit there. But the reason I say this, I'm giving credit to Tibbs. Tibbs wasn't the problem in Minnesota. The Knicks are a good team, but you look at the Western Conference. The Jazz are 44-16. I think it should terrify people that with all the injuries and stuff the Nets have dealt with, they're 41-20. But the Jazz are 44-16. They've been lights out. The Suns are 42-18. And for some reason, people don't believe in them. The Clippers are up to 43-19 really quietly. The Nuggets are 39-21. The Lakers have dealt with a ton of injuries, and they're still 35-25. The Mavericks have been playing much better of late. They're 33-26. So you're looking, it's like, okay, so the 6th and 7th teams in the East look really comparable to the 6th and 7th teams in the West. Sure. Maybe I disagree with that because you have to think about who they're playing more frequently. The Lakers are a 35-25 team, and they've been playing without Anthony Davis and LeBron for a large stretch of the season. They have a better record than the Knicks. And yes, some of that is to do with having LeBron and AD, but they're better than their record. They're better than a 35-25 team. The Mavericks have also dealt with missing Doncic for a bit, Porzingis not being there to start off the season, and they're 33-26. 7 games over 500, based on the number of games they played, whatever. The Knicks are 7 games above 500. The Luka and Kristaps Porzingis is a better duo than the Knicks' best duo, which is Julius Randle and R.J. Barrett, maybe. Like, the Mavericks have a better roster. the Trailblazers, and it seems like they're dealing with injuries all the time, but they've got a better roster than the Knicks. Like, they're a really, really good team. They're 32-28. The Grizzlies, 31-28. They just don't have any players that are real like sieves. They go like 9, 10 deep in guys who are better than replacement level players. They have guys on their bench that would start for other teams, like multiple guys on their bench who would probably be starters elsewhere. The Spurs at 30-29, they're really solid, and they've been honestly better without Aldridge. The Warriors are 31-30, and I have a feeling the Warriors could go toe-to-toe with the Knicks and the Hawks in a 7-game series just because of Steph Curry. The Pelicans are 26-34. They're kind of frustrating, but it's because of a lot of their youth and some different issues. Let's see. I'm trying to see. And you look at like these conference records. Let me. So you're looking at the conference records, and all of these teams have winning records in the conference until you get to the Warriors, who are 12-20. They feasted on the Eastern Conference. Oh, wait. I'm looking at the away record. My bad. I got off track. Okay, let's look at these conference records again. So you're looking at the conference records, and your first team with a losing record is the Trailblazers. They're 17-18. The Grizzlies are 14-20. The Spurs are 16-20. The Warriors actually have a winning record at 17-14. The Pelicans are 14-18. The Western Conference, the top of the Western Conference is really hard. These teams have winning records against Eastern Conference opponents, or at least close to it. Let's see. Well, the Warriors, they're one game over, so they actually have a losing record against the East. But they played really well, and they beat the Sixers in Philly in the last week. You're looking at, or maybe it was last weekend, the Spurs, they're 16-20. So they're one game above 500. So they obviously are +5 against the Eastern Conference. The Grizzlies are +9 against the Eastern Conference. The Trailblazers are +5 against the Eastern Conference. All these teams above here have plus records against the Eastern Conference. Yeah, they have to. Well, except maybe, let's see, the Clippers. Yeah, even the Clippers. So, I mean, you can't. I think this play-in tournament, and the reason I'm going through all this to explain this is, the play-in tournament in a way makes sense for the Western Conference because there are all these pretty good teams right here that would arguably be, if they were in the Eastern Conference and replace some of those other teams, probably would have better records. And they don't. Like, you're looking at their roster, and it's like, Kings' roster looks really similar to some of these teams that have better records in the East. The Pelicans' roster is simply better than a lot of these teams in the East. Although their youth cost them a number of games. Because let's just look at the Eastern Conference. So, I mean, the Sixers are 25-9 against their own conference. You go down here, and the Hawks are +6 against their conference, which means they're +1 against the West. And that's because most of their games against the Western Conference come against bad teams. Like the bottom level of teams. The Knicks are +5, so they're +2 against the Western Conference. The Celtics are they're +2 against the Western Conference. But the Celtics also occupy a really tough division, so because they're playing against the Nets and the Sixers and the Raptors. The Heat are +1 against the West. But then you get into these other teams, and it's like the Hornets. So this is would be your normal 8th seed here. They are minus, let's see, if they're dead even, so they're -1 against the West. The Pacers, they're dead even. And then you have the Wizards, who actually, they have a positive win record against the Western Conference, which honestly is kind of bizarre. Although, to be fair, a number of wins for some of these teams have come with teams basically benching like all of their starters. Because the Bucks dropped a game to the Hornets. I think it was the Bucks. It was the Bucks or the Nets dropped a game to the Hornets recently, but they didn't have any of their big three. They sat all of them. I was listening to the Zach Lowe podcast earlier, the Low Post podcast earlier, and they were talking about it. So some of these numbers are a little loud because a lot of teams will rest their best players against bad teams during the season. So right now you have the Bulls and the Raptors. Bulls apparently have the tiebreaker over the Raptors right now. I don't know. I just think these teams are bad. And you look at another way to like show this is you look at their point differentials. So the top 6 teams in the East, like the Knicks' point differential is +2.2. Look at how significantly smaller that is than the top 3 in the East. And also look at the Bucks' point differential. A lot of their losses come when they rest their top players. After you get past the top 6 teams in the East, immediately everyone's got a negative point differential. And look at the Wizards' point differential. It's -3.3. They either eke out wins or they get blown out. The crazy thing is the Raptors have a positive point differential. They're +0.6. They're 10 wins below 500. Which means, once again, if they're winning games, they're winning big and they're losing small. They're losing smaller than they win by. I mean, that's kind of fluky. And then, holy crud, the Magic are -8.4. Like, you look at them compared to the Pistons who are at the bottom of the conference in record right now. The Pistons have, they have over double the negative point differential. That's bad. And the Cavs are -6.9. They had that hot start to the season, but they've been pretty trash since. The Pistons at least are fighting compared to those guys. But this is the issue. So let's look at the point differentials for the West. I don't know if it's going to be extremely different, but so we go out to the West, and here are your point differentials. The Jazz are +9. That's insane. And when you're looking at point differentials, the Sixers and Nets wouldn't even be in the top 4 in the West. So 4 of your top 5 teams by point differential are from the Western Conference. Numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5. Then the 5th best team, the Lakers, has a plus 3.3. And you're looking in the play-in area here. Well, number 6 is 1.6 for the Mavs. And then you're looking in the play-in, minus half a point. Plus 1.5 for the Grizzlies. The Blazers are just really good in crunch time because of Dame. You've got minus 0.5 for the Spurs. You've got dead even for the Warriors. The Pelicans are only minus a tenth of a point. So these are your play-in range teams right here. And you compare that to the Eastern Conference, and you're looking at teams that are minus 0.7, minus 1.2, minus 0.3, minus 3.3, minus 1.2, because technically these teams are still mathematically in, plus 0.6. You have one team who is 10 games below 500 that is got a positive rating in that span. And yes, you're saying, well, what's that big a difference between 0.7 and minus 1.2 and minus 0.3 to, the Western Conference teams? It's who they're playing. It's who they're playing more consistently, like the level of competition that they're playing more consistently. The Warriors are in the same division as the Suns, the Clippers, and the Lakers. The Spurs and Grizzlies and Pelicans are in the same division as each other, and the Mavericks. All 4 of those teams are in the same division. The Trailblazers are in the same division as the Nuggets and the Jazz. And those are the teams you're playing the most. Look at the Jazz's. You look at the Jazz. The Jazz have the best record in the league, easily the best point differential. What was that? 9.1. They're almost 2.5 points clear of the second place Clippers in terms of point differential. They're just ridiculously deep. They're ridiculously good. And still, all these teams are within half a point of even, all of these teams. And they're playing better teams. Of course, these teams get to play like the Thunder, the Timberwolves, and the Rockets, but even the Kings, and they're minus 4.3, but the Kings are 24 and 36. They haven't been an easy out this season. They've had some decent games this year. They played some decent games this year. So you just don't have as elite of competition in the Eastern Conference in terms of when you're looking at the numbers. So I think this play-in thing is dumb because you're giving bad teams like the Wizards and the Bulls, who the Bulls are minus 1.2, but once again that's inflated because they played an easier schedule. The Bulls get to beat up on the Detroit Pistons and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And they're still 25 and 35. And both of those teams are in their division, as are the Pacers, who have been injured, had a lot of their top players injured and missed time this season. And yes, they have to deal with the Bucks, but they only have to deal with the Bucks. The Bulls, roster-wise, are easily the third best team in the division. You're looking at their roster since the trade deadline, and you'd probably argue that their roster's as good as the Pacers, or at least on paper. Some people might even say better than the Pacers. I don't know if I'd go that far, but... And they're 4 games back of the Pacers. I don't know. I think this play-in tournament's stupid. You're giving teams like the Wizards right now, minus 3.3 point differential. They've gotten a lot of their wins because of teams resting their best players against them. And crazily enough, out of everyone in the Eastern Conference, they have the least wins against this conference. Like their conference opponents, the teams they have to play the most. West Conference teams on road trips rest their top players against the Wizards. It's been happening all season. I think the play-in tournament's stupid. I just think it's dumb. Because this is the other thing. So the 7 and 8 seeded teams only have to win 1 game to win the series. If you're the 9th or 10th seed, you have to win back-to-back games to get into to the playoffs. Which, in this scenario, I'm just saying, none of these teams in the East are taking 2 games off of the Heat in a row. Unless they are just decimated with injuries. I don't see this, and the same thing with the Celtics. I just don't see it happening. The best team that would have a shot in this scenario is the Hornets, but it looks like they might end up being the 8th seed, or the Wizards could end up playing their way into that 8th seed. But with how average or worse these teams are in this range, they're not winning 2 games in a row. The Raptors probably would have the best shot. Well, didn't mean to do that. Didn't mean to do that either. I don't know. And for the West, it's like, you mean we went through this Western Conference gauntlet and played our way into playoff position just to have to play these other teams more? I don't know. It just... At that point, it's almost like, well, what's the point? What's the point of putting out that effort? Let's see, what is this? That's Legwold's top 100. Da-da-da. Ex-Steelers Cards offensive tackle Gilbert. Marcus Gilbert has retired from the NFL. Guess that just got announced. So, anyway, I think that's probably going to wrap up the show. I was thinking about getting into some draft rumors, but I guess I'll hold this article till tomorrow. So, let's see. Was there anything else I was thinking about talking about today? Talked about Curry. Talked about Brown. Talked about the play-in tournament. Oh, there was one other piece of news. So with the fallout from the English Super League, I've got 2 things left for the show. So a group of Arsenal legends and the CEO of Spotify are looking into making a bid for Arsenal FC in the English Premier League, one of the teams that was going to be a part of that Super League that has now fallen apart. And then the president of UEFA that insincere crook Kafarin or Safarin has said that the teams that were a part of the Super League are going to face punishments. How about these clubs just say screw you and not do it? Or not comply or just say whatever. Like, at this point, this has gotten so petty. Like, it's ridiculous. You've got fans acting like children over it, as far as I'm concerned. And groups of these fan bases, like, raiding team facilities, sending all kinds. It's not okay for people to send hate mail and threats for some things, but it's totally okay for people to threaten to kill and murder people's families over them starting a new league. But they're not reporting on this stuff on mainstream because we beat the big businesses. It's like we smash capitalism is what a lot of these activist journalists are doing right now. And that's not what happened. You just helped another capitalistic business out. And you're looking like idiots and fools. But they're not reporting on all this stuff. So, as long as you do it to the right people, you can send all the death threats and all kind of insanity you want. You can trash certain people's businesses or break into places and break the law, and it's okay. And you're either celebrated or ignored. As far as I'm concerned, this whole European Soccer League thing just showed me that, like, maybe or the English or the European Super League, maybe football or like international football, maybe soccer's not for me because apparently it's a sport for lunatics. And a sport for people who scream about tradition but ignore the fact that the sport has progressed and shirked tradition over and over and over and over and over again. Because I'm tired of seeing these English fans talk about tradition when I'm like, your Premier League did exactly that. And has been at the forefront of pushing the business side of soccer forward. It's really hilarious. So maybe I'm done with the soccer content. That's probably a stretch, but this is funny. It's really funny to see corporate lawyers and people, and a guy like Kafarin who's, who knows what kind of scumbags he defended as a defense attorney, or innocent people he put away if he was it's like I need to look it up to see what all he did. He was a criminal. It said he practiced criminal law, so I don't know if he was a prosecutor or if he was a defense attorney. But it's just really funny to see a guy who's leading a business that has been proven to have extensive corruption and is a massive business that does things all in their own self-interest and their monetary interests, complain about other people doing exactly the same thing. It's just really rich and hypocritical. And it's really funny for me to hear about people, or to see people like that Nigel guy, who his biggest thing is about sport, like gambling on games. Wants to talk about integrity and tradition and all these things. Bro, and people doing things for a money grab and because of greed. You are a gambler by trade. Get out of here. My gosh. You know what? And maybe I'm going to do this rant again tomorrow. I think that's going to be part of the show tomorrow, unless there's way more news. I just want to rant about this. And I hope I'm not too loud, because I am really peaking at the moment. I might need to turn... I don't know. With that being said, that's the show. Please, if I am a little loud at the moment, some of that might be the new space. Give me some criticism. Tell me what I need to change in the comments after the video's uploaded. If you enjoyed the stream, please leave a like. If you want more Blind Eye, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that bell notification or the bell next to the subscribe button. Turn notifications to all so you never miss any Blind Eye content. I will not be doing a stream Thursday. I've talked about it for the draft because I got a really cool opportunity to be part of to be on the vocal team, the singing team for an event coming up that my church is sponsoring called Beast Feast, and I have a rehearsal at 5:30 on Thursday, April 29th. The draft starts at 7. If I do end up getting on, it's not going to be as big a deal. I'm probably going to put some other stream of the draft or something up, and I'm going to talk about it and text my buddies, but I will not be getting like the big stream together this year because of that opportunity. Because it's not like I have a big business going here that not having that's going to jeopardize. So, and maybe that'll help the growth of the channel. I might still get on and stream, but I was planning on doing something bigger, and that's probably not going to happen now. So that's still a thing. Maybe I'll stream Friday during rounds 2 and 3. But Thursday, big plans are on hold because of the rehearsal and stuff. And I don't know how late that rehearsal is going to go. I don't know how long it's going to run. So we've got those the next 2 Thursdays, and the event's Tuesday, May 11th. So anybody who hadn't bought tickets for Beast Feast in the Beaumont, Texas area who's wanting to go, please look it up online. Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty and Duck Commander fame is speaking at the event. It's going to be really, really cool. There's going to be food of some kind. So please keep that in mind, and if you're in the area. So with that being said, that's all I got for the show today.